Are you involved in building a community? Today, I'm teaming up with community guru David Spinks to reveal the three most common mistakes community managers make and show you what to do instead. Hi, I'm Amy Jo Kim, founder of the Game Thinking Academy. Now, long before the game thinking system came to life, I wrote a book called Community Building on the Web that was based on my experiences designing social systems for online games, marketplaces, and services. That book laid out 9 timeless design principles for building a high retention online community. And 2 decades later, it's still being used by hot startups like Clubhouse and Circle, who reached out to me to let me know how much they were getting out of my work. That book has introduced me to so many amazing founders, including David Spinks, founder of CMX, the leader in advocating for and training community managers. I recently got a chance to sit down with David and talk about his new book, The Business of Belonging, which is a manual for how to build and manage a thriving online community. During our conversation, David revealed the 3 most common mistakes that he sees community managers make, and we talked about what you can do instead. If community is part of your business strategy, you're going to love this. Listen in. Welcome, David, to Game Thinking TV.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
I'm so excited to get a chance to hang out with you. So, your book is called The Business of Belonging. We will link it with this episode, we'll link it in the comments, etc. You've worked so hard to legitimize community management as a field, as a profession. This book, I think, is going to go a long way. What are some of the things, maybe 1 or 2 things, that people that are new to community management and excited about it have to learn that a very experienced community manager would know? What are some of the common mistakes or misconceptions people might come in with?
I mean, that's my hope with the book is that it makes the path easier for this next generation of community professionals so they don't have to learn the hard way. And I learned the hard way. I got fired once from a director of community job, crushed my motivation and confidence for a long time. And it's because I made some of these mistakes.
Mistake 1, loving people without loving data.
I think the core mistake is that a lot of community builders come into this work because they love people, but they really succeed in this work when they learn to love data. And that can be a tension for a lot of people in community. In the world of business, if you can't speak with data to the outcomes that you are driving for the business, you will struggle to get buy-in, you will struggle to get support, and that's why so many community professionals end up burning out, getting fired, getting laid off, really struggling to take a seat at the table in a business. A lot of community professionals will take on this role and immediately start with the tactics. They'll just start organizing events, launching a Slack group, launching a Facebook, launching a forums, hosting discussion groups, like just bringing people together, because that's community building, is bringing people together. Community can drive many different parts of your business, from support, marketing, products. Anything in your business can be accelerated and driven by building community around it. But if you start with the business objective that you're trying to achieve first and then design the community around that objective, then you can ensure that you are accountable to something that's impacting the business. And at the end of the quarter or the half or whenever it is that you're sitting down with your manager, or your CEO has to go and sit with the board, you're able to report specifically on not just engagement metrics of like, yeah, look how many people participated in our forum or showed up to our events. At the end of the day, that doesn't matter unless you can say, and that led to our 50% growth in ARR, or our 30% reduction in support costs, or our 20% increase in customer retention and customer lifetime value. If you can't tie community engagement metrics back to those business metrics, you'll struggle to get buy-in, resources, and you'll end up being too spread thin to really do the incredible work of building community.
Mistake number 2, community without leadership. As I was listening to you, I was thinking about one of the lessons I've learned again and again and again working with community. There's no replacement for leadership. A misconception I see a lot is a business thinks if they just set up a Discord or set up some message boards, somehow stuff will just happen. And I feel like the
Right.
work you do, my earlier book, a lot of people's work talks
Mhm.
about why would you bother to hire a community manager? Because without leadership and without that guiding light tying it to the metrics, the community will go sideways.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look at like this recent example, the New York Times cooking community. Did you see this thing? They like
They
had
shut
a
it
Facebook
down.
group.
Yeah.
Well, no, they didn't even shut it down. They just like handed it to the community because there's no one running it. They didn't have any sort of community team or structure or governance or like anything. And they're just like, well, we don't know what to do with this. So here you go. And it just exploded and it's like toxicity. It just was awful and is a prime example of like, yes, hire experienced community professionals. Like there is a profession for doing this work and it's extremely complex work. There's a ton of emotional labor that goes into it. It is some of the hardest work in the world and it takes a very specific skill set and set of abilities and strategy and processes in order to build community the right way in a way that leads to a healthy, welcoming, inclusive, meaningful community for the members in it. And in order to actually have impact on the business at the end of the day, you need to put a professional community team in place.
Yep. And if you don't, and you start running a community and a bunch of people come in, chaos will ensue. But it's that.
Chaos or nothing will ensue, or no one will show up
Yeah,
because there's no one
exactly.
there actually driving engagement. You have to have people who feel a sense of ownership and responsibility to pushing anything forward that's going to be built. And the reality is that we have this idea, even in open source. There's a really good book called Working in Public by Nadia Eghbal that's like kind of challenges this conception that people have that communities are these like equally distributed networks where everyone is contributing and pulling their own weight. The reality is very, very different. There's very, very, very small percentage of contributors. Sometimes it's one person who is creating almost all the value for everybody else, and everyone else just passively consumes. It's the 99-1 rule in community. 1% will create, 9% will respond, and 90% will just passively consume. I do think decentralization is inevitable to some degree, but that doesn't mean you're going to be able to completely decentralize leadership in that way. I think the problem to focus on is that in community driven business, we're asking all of these different people to contribute in different ways. And they're doing it because they care, but they're not seeing much upside of that company succeeding, right? If you join a company and start hosting events as an ambassador for that company, and then that company succeeds a lot, is that person who hosted all those events actually seeing any upside from that company? Probably not.
Mistake 3, scaling up too early.
It's a lesson that I have to keep reteaching myself, which is doing things that don't scale. I think we, especially in the world of business and startups, we default to, okay, how can I build this community for 1,000 people or 10,000 people? Or if we're launching something new, for whatever reason, we always want to just be like, all right, I'll just figure out what they need. I'll just use my thoughts and the things I'm aware of, and I'll research in general, and then we'll make a decision. We'll try it. And we don't just go and get 3 people on the phone to talk to and hear from them directly. How can this community serve them? How can you improve the community? What's their experience like today? So just doing things that don't scale, getting on the phone with people, talking to your members, just being very, very, very hands on to the extent that you're able to until you figure out what works. You find those pieces of community market fit. And once you figure that out, then you create repeatable processes to be able to scale it up and grow it and grow it and grow it. But when you're still trying to figure out like what is this community and how can we build something that feels really compelling to people, really novel, something that will actually become a core part of their personal identity, you have to just be very, very, very hands on and personal in that approach.
That is wonderful. And so, for folks that want to know more about you, want to get your book, give us the website where we can send folks.
Yeah, so you go to cmxhub.com and you can learn everything you want to learn about community and community driven business. If you go to cmxhub.com/book, you can find out about the business of belonging. You can also buy it on Amazon or bookstores, anywhere you can buy books. Bevy is bevy.com for all of your virtual events and community events. And check out my podcast, Masters of Community, where I interview lots of incredible experts like you, all experts on community and gamification and community driven business.
Fantastic. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your carving out some time for us to hang out and share some of your experiences and wisdom. Really
Of
appreciate it.
course. Thank you so much for having me. Always happy to come back.
So, there you have it, 3 all too common community mistakes and what to do instead. Let's recap. Mistake 1, loving people without loving data. A community that doesn't serve your business is a waste of resources. Don't make that mistake. Instead, design your community around your business objectives and make sure that you're able to define and track your success metrics. Mistake number 2, community without leadership. Growing a healthy community requires skill and dedicated ongoing leadership. Instead of assuming your community might run itself, put a professional community team in place to make sure that you get the most value out of this important asset. Mistake 3, scaling up too early. Before you can grow and scale a healthy community, you need to get to know specific individuals. That's why it's crucial to be hands-on when you're first starting your community and only scale up once you've established those important relationships. Want to learn more tips for keeping your customers engaged? Join us in the Game Thinking Hub, our free learning community for innovative product leaders. Go to gamethinking.io/hub to sign up. I'll see you there.